Hi, Nicole Munoz here from Start Ranking Now, and I would like to tell you about how I got started out online. In the year 2001, my family and I, which at the time was my husband and my 4-month-old, we packed up our bags from San Diego, California, and we headed on down to the country of Mexico to begin our life as missionaries. So we're actually independent fundamental Baptist missionaries sent from the United States to go to Mexico to start churches. So we headed on down there in 2001 and all excited to go out there and start churches, and that's something that we have actually been doing for the last 13 years. Well, while we were down there, about a couple years after we had arrived, you know, most missionaries they're always living on a budget. And there was something that I missed from the States, and that was the ability to just go to Starbucks once in a while. So one day, as I was searching on the internet, I thought, I wonder if by using the internet, I might be able to earn an extra $200 a month or so, and then I would be able to go to Starbucks every once in a while. And I thought, wow, that would be really cool. So I was surfing around and I found this link to an ebook called How to Start a Yahoo Store. I thought, wow, this looks like I could do this. This looks pretty easy, but it was $47. And let me tell you, at that time in 2003, $47 could have been $47,000. It was so much more than we just were living on such a tight budget. So I went to my husband and I said, honey, you know, what do you think? And he graciously agreed. So he bought me this ebook for $47 and I was so excited. And so I got this ebook and I began to read it, and it showed me a lot of different things, but it showed me how I could set up my own e-commerce website, how I could do something called drop shipping, where I didn't actually have to buy inventory, but I could use drop shippers to sell products and put their products on my website and have them be shipped directly to the vendors. So I began to do all of the research that the book taught me how to do about investigating your target market, finding out supply and demand, and I decided to sell camping gear. So I thought, well, I could do this. The competition doesn't look that bad. At the time, most of the major retailers, they weren't doing anything online. So they weren't really optimizing their websites for the search engines. And so I got my business license and I bought my domain name, began to build my website. Now the book, it told me that I could use something called Excel to add products to the website, but I didn't know what Excel was. So I had to add all 800 products to the website one at a time. Now let me tell you, my website was extremely well organized. When I would talk to customers on the phone, they would say to me, your website is the most organized website I've ever seen. And I said, yeah, it's because I put every single product on the shelf myself. So anyways, well, we launched this website and it was so exciting. Like 2 weeks after we launched it, I sold a cooler online, and that was thrilling to make. I think we made like $15 on that, but that was so exciting to make my first dollar online. And so we started to sell a little bit more and more, and pretty soon we were selling maybe about $3,000 a month of camping gear, and that was pretty good. That was exciting, but I began to wonder, how could I get more sales? How could I get more traffic to my website? This is pretty fun. So there was another course that came out called Stomping the Search Engine. So, and again, that was like, I think it was like $297. And again, that was, to me at the time, was a huge investment, but I took the risk, we took the plunge, talked it over with my husband, bought this course, got this package of 6 CDs in the mail, I think it was at the time, and began to put into action the things I learned. And after putting into action these things, the next thing I knew, my site began to rank #1 in Google for the word camping gear. Well, that was so exciting. Kind of, sort of, because we got to be #1 for camping gear, and so all of a sudden we got all this traffic to our website. We were getting about $30,000 of sales, so we went from $3,000 a month to $30,000 a month. The problem was that the drop shippers never had anything in stock. So people would order this red cooler and I'd be calling them on the phone, hi, Mr. Customer, I know that you ordered a red cooler, but we're all out of red coolers. Would you like to have a blue cooler instead? And I'll give you 5% off if you decide to make this change. And they would accept, and so that was fun. And so then what we decided to do was, okay, since the drop shippers never have enough inventory in stock, why don't we just order the inventory ourselves? So we began to do that. We got a warehouse, began to order direct from the manufacturers, hired some of my family members to work for us full-time, which they did for many years after that, and to help us to ship things out, and began to learn more about business and growing our business, and just had a really fun time with that. Well, after doing that for a few years, again, I got this email telling me about this membership website that was going to be opening up called Stompernet. And I thought, wow, this sounds great, you know. I bought this ebook for $47. That turned out pretty good. Then I bought this other product called Stomping the Search Engines for $2.97. I did really good with that. So I should probably maybe Stompernet. Maybe that could be like the next thing that I do that's going to be hugely successful. Except it was a huge investment. At the time it was $800 a month, which I paid for like 3 years. So I didn't join right away in October, because by this time in October of 2006, I had a few more kids. In fact, at that time I had kids numbers 4 and 5 actually. My twins were born right when Stompernet launched. So I didn't join right then, but a few months later I got an email from Leslie Rohde saying, hey, guess what? I've just been invited to be on faculty, and I have this opportunity to bring in some of my students with me. Would you like to join? And my twins at that point were 3 months old. I said, yes. That sounds great. So I joined Stompernet, and it was amazing. One of the first things that I learned there was about how that if I was doing something that I could pay someone else to do for $10 an hour, then I was literally making $10 an hour. So I think it was like 2 weeks after I joined Stompernet, I went out and hired my first webmaster, and that was exciting. So we began to build out our niche websites. We built up like all of these little tiny websites that drove more traffic, that got us more sales and more revenue, and I hired a customer service person to handle all of the phone calls. So I wasn't processing orders anymore, and it was so exciting. Well, I was a member there for, I don't know, 6 months to a year, and finally I saw that there was other people there that had some questions, and I felt, well, maybe I could help them. Maybe I could answer their questions. So I started to just answer other people's questions, and after doing that for about 6 months, the faculty of Stompernet, they approached me and they asked me if I'd like to be a moderator. And I said, oh, that would be a huge honor. So I became a moderator, later became a faculty member, and then as I began to do webinars and teach people some of the things that I had learned and that I had implemented and took action on, people would literally, I would do a webinar for Stompernet, and literally I would get off the webinar and my phone would ring, and they'd say, hey, I was just on your webinar, and I know you taught me how to do this, but that's just so much work. Can you just do this for me? So that's when we started Start Ranking Now. So Start Ranking Now became, in the beginning, a outsourcing agency where people would say, well, I want you to do this, this, and this. Can you do this? And we'd work it up, and I would have my same team that was helping me with my website. They would now be doing work for some of our clients. Well, that was fun. It worked for about 6 to 12 months. But after a while, as I got more experience and working with a lot of different clients, I began to see when people would request things from me, I would say, you know what? I know that's not going to work. I know you just learned something from here, but I know from my experience, from seeing other people try to do this and it not working, that what you're trying to do is not going to work. So why don't we do this? So I grew up into a consultant where I began to be consulting people, and so our agency shifted from being an outsourcing agency to a consulting agency, and that's where we're at now. So Start Ranking Now today, it's a full-service digital marketing agency, and when you work with Start Ranking Now, you get to work with me, and I get to work on your business to help you to figure out what the best strategies are. So thank you for listening to my story, and I think I hear my 2-year-old knocking on my door right now, so I better call it a day. Talk to you later.